For a long time, I've been predicting that the US regulatory hammer would come down on crypto. I thought this would happen sometime after the 2022 midterm elections, which were followed by the holiday season, which meant it would have to be 2023. It would need to be after the elections to avoid a negative response from young pro crypto voters. Why a crackdown in the first place? Because there's way too much money in traditional finance in the US, and there's no way those institutions would be disintermediated without a fight. I expected that this could mean a lot of trouble for DeFi or anyone making money by issuing fungible tokens. What I didn't expect so soon in 2023 was to be hearing rumblings that the regulators would be going after something as fundamental to the base layer protocols as staking. Fortunately, Cardano made a decision early in its development that makes it much more regulatorily resistant than a soft target like Ethereum staking. Ready? Let's go. Today, we are going to discuss one of the most established crypto companies tipping everyone off to these disturbing new rumors, the separate US crackdown on crypto banking access and what it might mean, a new crypto paper out of the UK on a digital pound, and SundaeSwap getting some recognition in the mainstream crypto press. If you think the most disturbing part of this image is that we can't tell which regulator threw the first hammer, or if you're finding value in these videos each weekday, please consider delegating to the Army of Spies stake pool, ticker AOS. We're about to discuss some disturbing rumors. The reason these rumors are disturbing, part of it anyways, is that they're coming from what I would call a pretty reliable source. Brian Armstrong is the founder and CEO of Coinbase. And he has, let's say he has resources at his disposal. If you imagine who in crypto has the greatest vested interest in being on top of what's going to happen in US crypto regulation, and who also maybe has the most resources to make sure he's on top of what's happening in US crypto regulation, Brian Armstrong is going to be on that list. For a lot of people, he's probably going to be at the very top of that list. This is a person who needs and can stay on top of what's happening in US crypto regulation. And here's what he's saying. We're hearing rumors that the SEC would like to get rid of crypto staking in the US for retail customers, period. This is a pretty big sentence. He follows it up with, I hope that's not the case, as I believe it would be a terrible path for the US if that was allowed to happen. I agree, of course, with the sentiment in that second sentence. And it makes me hopeful that he says, I hope that's not the case, because that tells me that he's not already certain that's the case. And I do agree with him. This would be a terrible path for the US if this were to happen. Why? Because it would basically just mean an offshoring of crypto. Crypto staking, to whatever extent it would be regulated, would end up being offshored. It's not like the entire world is going to stop with the crypto staking. Crypto staking is just going to carry on in other parts of the world. But there's something important here. Brian Armstrong is like a lot of people in legacy crypto. When he says staking, what he really means is Ethereum staking. That's what he's really concerned about. So he thinks about staking in terms of what you see with Ethereum staking. And you can tell that's the case because when he tries to make the case that staking is not a security, and he says he's got a good primer for you, it's this primer. This primer he's pointing to is written by Jake Chervinsky, among others. Jake Chervinsky is certainly a knowledgeable crypto attorney. But it's interesting. This primer addresses the issue directly as to Ethereum staking. So you can tell that because it does what you expect. It lays out the Howey test, which we've talked about many times in this channel. And then when it says application of Howey to proof of stake Ethereum, they start like this. The argument takes the following structure, and then they lay out how critics are applying the Howey test to Ethereum. I won't bore you with that right now, but here's the important part. He says, putting aside whether a validator depositing ETH into a smart contract would qualify as an investment of money, and then he goes on to address the other three prongs in the Howey test. He doesn't want to talk about the authors. There's more than one author, but they don't want to talk about whether or not depositing the ETH into the validator is an investment of money. Number one, they want to talk about, is it an investment in a common enterprise with the reasonable expectation of profits derived solely from the efforts of others. They want to talk about those last three prongs. They don't want to talk about the first one. And that's because the architects of Ethereum made this fatal mistake. They made this fatal mistake when they decided to envision Ethereum staking, and that was custody by the stake pools. That's why in any argument addressing whether or not Ethereum staking involves securities, they have to say, putting aside whether a validator depositing ETH into a smart contract would qualify as an investment of money, because it's a really hard argument to make. If you are taking custody of someone's funds and they're getting a return in exchange, it's really hard to craft an argument that doesn't in some way fall under some kind of securities or commodities or banking regulatory regime. Pretty much we could say in the traditional world, if you're doing any activity where you take custody of someone's money and they're getting a yield on that, some kind of return, it's really hard to describe that scenario being the case and you not falling under some kind of securities, commodities, or banking regulation or law. In fact, I can say in crypto DeFi generally, it's really hard to make the case anywhere that's happening, anywhere a DeFi platform is taking custody of a user's assets and giving them a return. It's really hard if they're not complying somehow. It's really hard to say how they're not violating some kind of securities, commodities, or banking law. That's the problem with Ethereum staking. Everybody freaks out. Everybody's going to freak out as soon as they see that Brian Armstrong said regulators might be going after staking, because they're only thinking about Ethereum staking, where they made this fatal mistake of making it validator custody staking. Down here in the conclusion of this article that Brian Armstrong is positing as a good primer on this, you can see they say, as shown above, analyzing the economic realities of staking ETH on Ethereum's proof of stake network, a court should find that staking fails to satisfy the Howey test because there is no common enterprise and validators are never relying on the efforts of others. He's focusing on those later prongs, not prong one. And in fact, the strongest thing they're willing to say about prong one of the Howey test here is, while not the focus of this paper, there are also questions about whether depositing ETH to stake would qualify as an investment of money. These are very pro-crypto people, and the strongest thing they're willing to say about this is there are questions, but it's not a focus of this paper. Believe me, if they thought they had a convincing case on that, they would put it in the paper. It would be in this primer that Brian Armstrong's pointing to. That's because that prong is terrible for Ethereum. You know who it's not terrible for? Cardano. It's really hard to say that you're making an investment when the stake pool doesn't take custody of any assets. You notice back up here at the top, prong one is described as an investment of money. How can it possibly be an investment of money if it never leaves your own wallet? In Cardano, you keep custody of your assets. You're never sending your money anywhere. How can you have an investment of money if the money never leaves your own wallet? It could be on your Ledger hardware wallet or any other hardware wallet you have, or any software wallet, but it's never going to leave your wallet. Delegating in Cardano proof of stake is more akin to voting. Who gets to make the blocks this epoch? It's more like voting for different validators to make the blocks this epoch. And sure, there's an incentive system behind it. And certainly in Cardano staking, there's a certain return involved. But you don't have this prong one. You don't have an investment of money because you keep the money. It's self-custodied staking. This is not an accident. When Charles and company were laying out how to do staking in Cardano, I can guarantee you they didn't do this accidentally with no regard for regulatory concerns. They certainly knew that custody is a big deal when it comes to any kind of definition of an investment of money. Have you ever heard of an investment of money where you don't have to do anything with your money, where your money never leaves your wallet? There's no like securities fraudsters who come to you and say, hey, as part of my securities fraud I'm going to perpetrate on you, you just keep all your money. Your money never leaves your account. It never leaves your bank account. That's how my securities fraud works. That's not a thing. That doesn't exist. They always take your money. An investment always involves them taking your money. Cardano looks great on this prong one. All of crypto is going to be worried about this. If there's any foundation to these rumors that Brian Armstrong is talking about, all of crypto is going to be worried about this because Ethereum made a terrible choice. They made this terrible choice in employing slashing, which requires validator custody, whereas Cardano made the right choice. I would never wish any kind of regulatory harm on any other project in crypto. But man, if this turns out to be true, it could be really bad, like nightmare bad for Ethereum. And Cardano might be unscathed because it made good decisions. Of course, securities enforcement actions are not the only hammer available to US federal regulators. Here's a post that says, update, the Fed and OCC, Office of the Comptroller of the Currency, are in the midst of a massive crypto debanking operation. Source, what is going on is draconian and aimed to kill crypto. Fed and OCC are going after Morgan Stanley, Custodia Bank, and even states that are crypto friendly like Wyoming. You're probably aware Custodia Bank is Caitlin Long's bank. It's a speedy bank under Wyoming law, and they've been battling for a long time to try to get the Fed to get the Fed to give them a routing number so they can have access to things like wires and ACH. It's pretty hard to be a crypto bank if you don't have access to ACH and wires and things like that, because the reason people need a bank in crypto is for the fiat on-ramp. And if you can't use ACH, pretty tough to have a crypto on-ramp. This little thread continues. More sources, Paxos Global and others were told by the Office of the Comptroller of the Currency to either withdraw their banking charter applications or they would be denied by Friday. VCs are starting to become very, very concerned that their crypto portfolio companies are being debanked en masse. The OCC is said to produce a paper shortly that is said to be so draconian that a sizable portion of OCC employees may depart. When you see people with good federal bureaucrat jobs willing to leave those jobs, things are probably going awry. Speaking of Caitlin Long's Custodia Bank in Wyoming, so I believe they've been trying to become a member of the Federal Reserve System for something like 2 years. It's been this ongoing saga that never ends. As we've talked about, they need to become a member of the Federal Reserve System so they can have things like a routing number so they can use ACH and receive wires and all those things that you need to do the fiat on-ramp stuff. The Fed recently released this. The Fed announced its denial of the application by Custodia Bank. The firm's novel business model and proposed focus on crypto assets presented significant safety and soundness risks. The board has previously made clear that such crypto activities are highly likely to be inconsistent with safe and sound business banking practices. So it might as well have said business practices, but they're in the banking business. This is a pretty effective way for federal regulators to kind of choke and suffocate crypto. If they don't allow crypto access to fiat on-ramps, like, allowing something like a Custodia Bank to exist and be a fiat on-ramp, a lot less money is going to be able to come into crypto. People are getting pretty excited about this. And while you may not appreciate his past maximalism, Nick Carter has gone through and created a pretty detailed article laying out all of the different regulatory actions that are being taken right now, which he's describing as an Operation Chokepoint 2.0. He kind of sums it up by saying, I don't want to alarm, but since the turn of the year, a new Operation Chokepoint type operation began targeting the crypto space in the US. It is a well-coordinated effort to marginalize the industry and cut off its connectivity to the banking system, and it's working. He has released this piece on a website called piratewires.com. I'll let you go check that out if you want more detail on exactly what's alleged to be happening right now. Meanwhile, the Bank of England and the UK Treasury have released this consultation paper, The Digital Pound, a new form of money for households and businesses, question mark. You can kind of guess where this is heading. I think we've talked many times on this channel about what all the central banks seem to be thinking when it comes to central bank digital currencies. So this paragraph in the foreword, I believe, is kind of indicative of what this is all about. On the basis of our work to date, the Bank of England and the Treasury judged that it is likely a digital pound will be needed in the future. It is too early to commit to build the infrastructure for one, but we are convinced that further preparatory work is justified. So I think, in my opinion, we can probably just take the question mark away. It could just be called the digital pound, a new form of money. It seems like all the central banks in the entire world are moving towards central bank digital currencies, which are very, very controversial in crypto. But this is just more evidence that this shift is definitely happening. Finally, this next part was shocking to me. A Cardano DeFi project, a DEX, SundaeSwap, actually got some good coverage today in Coindesk. I know, it's unbelievable. Actually, some good coverage. The article is called Cardano DEX SundaeSwap Floats First On-Chain Governance Proposal. The proposal determines the terms, conditions, and parameters of future proposals if passed by token holders. And you can go to the SundaeSwap governance portal if you want to read all about this. The post said, the first on-chain SundaeSwap governance vote is now up at governance.sundaeswap.finance, submitted by Pi. This proposal, if passed and adopted, would adopt the processes and procedures outlined here. You can go to this link and read all about what they're proposing. But to me, the most unbelievable part is that Coindesk actually gave a Cardano project some positive coverage. I think this is a good sign. I hope you're having a great week, and I'll talk to you tomorrow.